this shading packet that I created, we have just basic shapes that I've turned into forms for you. So we started with the basic shape of rectangles, and I've turned them into a form, which is a cube. The light source will be given to you on your worksheet, and you are to shade the forms correctly with putting a shadow, because remember, anytime you shade an object, you have a shadow, and you'll be starting at the base of them and coming outwards this way. So if you don't remember what I talked about the other time was, here's the light source, and this would be like if we were standing here, this would be our feet, so our shadow would be connected to our feet, and we could lay our pencil down to where our feet is aligned with the light source, and this way you know which way the shadow will be going. What you could also do, if this helps, is draw a line where the two spots, the outer edges, would be coming this way. So here's an outer edge and an outer edge. The light source would be going this way. There would be my outer edges of my feet again, and the light source will be going this way, shining on it. So my shadow is going to be on the opposite side. What you also need to do is think of what kind of shape the shadow will have. It's not going to be a circle one because this is what kind of shape? Yes, it's a cube. So it's going to have square edges and straight lines with it. So what I've done is I've already have some here that I've shaded on. So you can see here would be the light source shining on the object. Opposite side is the shadow. And then the same with these two. And I'm just going to shade on this one and use a pencil with it. If you have a mechanical pencil, it will take a little bit longer. So it's easier if you have a regular number 2 pencil is fine. If you have a shading stick pencil like what I have where it's all just the pencil graphite lead and there's no wood on it, they last a lot longer to shade. If you have shading pencils, this would be a great time to use them too. And remember, when it has the letter B on it, it means it's a soft lead and it's going to be getting darker. So my 2B is one of my lighter shading pencils, and as it would work its way up to, say, the 7B, it's going to be really, really dark. And I want to use the B ones, not the ones that have the letter H, because the letter H will mean it's going to be a harder lead, so it's not going to shade. But if you have just a regular number 2 pencil, like what I have here, that will work. If you have a shading stick to blend, that works great, but I also could just use my finger or I could just use a tissue. And then have an eraser so we can pull the highlights back up. You could have a kneaded eraser. Some shading kits have that. And to refresh it, you just knead it like you would clay. That's why it's called a kneaded eraser. And then you could shape it into the form that you want to pull out your highlights and stuff. So this is not a normal eraser to where you can erase everything. This one will just help with the pulling out of the highlights and stuff. So what I'm going to do is just work on this page with you so you can see how it's done. And then I'll show you my samples of my other ones. So to start with, I'm just going to draw in which way the shadow is going. And I'm going to have this one, because it's a taller object, it's mostly just going to go off the page. And if it's going all the way off the page, that's fine. What I ended up doing was I have this angle right here. I'm going to repeat it here. And then this one would have went straight and it would have been going off the page towards the bottom of it. Then I'm going to look at this one. Remember, shadows only start at the bottom. Our shadow is not up in the air. So I'm going to have the light going this way. So my shadow is on the opposite side. And I don't want to forget this corner would have some of a shadow going too. Then what I'm going to do is go straight across, keeping the same space. Now I see which angle this is, so I'm going to make it parallel. And that would be how I would get the shadow for this one. Same thing, look at which way the light's shining. My shadow is the opposite side. And if you need to draw lines on your piece of paper to help you do this, that's fine. You can always erase them. And then don't forget this corner here. And we could just have this one go off the page again since it's such a tall shape or form. So super dark here. And even when using this type of pencil, instead of just sitting there holding it like we normally would, it's going to take a long time to shade. If you lay your pencil down, tilt it to just where the lead is on the paper, see how much faster it's going to shade. And you still have control over it, of pressing down hard to get the really dark edges and not putting as much pressure on it and getting lighter towards that. So you could use either one. And you do need to be putting a lot of lead on this just because you're going to have to move it around to blend. A lot of people, they just press with one line and then they try to smudge it and they're like, it's not going anywhere. It's because you don't have enough pencil lead on your piece of paper. And the pencil that I'm using, it's just called a woodless graphite pencil. You can get them in the art supply sections. And I'm going to get lighter as I go towards there. And I will be blending this with my finger or a tissue. And then we'll clean up all the edges. And when we do blend, you'll notice some of it comes off. And that way we'll have to retouch just so we have a nice edge. So I'm not going to shade everywhere because if I just smear it then, which you really shouldn't have to do a lot of, that gives you so much more of an area that you need to clean. So if I do like this and it's going everywhere, that just gave me more surface area that I'm going to have to clean up. And don't just do this when cleaning it up because now you made it look like it has a halo aura kind of thing around it. So easier to stay inside that when you are shading and it's less cleanup later. Because we don't walk around with like an aura around us shining, which would be really cool if we did. But so I'm going to blend just with my tissue. You could use your finger if you want, if you have one of these. Some people like it because it has more control, especially in little areas, those small detailed areas. And see, it's picking up here, so I'm just going to move this just a little bit more with my pencil by putting the lead back on, because I picked some of it up, so I need to put it back also just to retouch up those areas. Now, this isn't as dark as it should be because this is seeing no light at all, so it should be really, really dark. So I'm just going to keep going over with my pencil here. And there's also graphite shading sticks that you could have. You could do this with charcoal if you have charcoal. Okay. When we shade anything, you want to blend it so it has nice values going throughout. And remember, we want the full value scale. So you're going to have the darkest part of the value scale, and then you're going to go through your mediums to your lightest, which would be the highlight. And I need to pull that back out. So I could use the pencil eraser that I have here to do it. Use your regular eraser. And I want that to be the highlight. So that's the area that's seeing the most light. And then I'm going to retouch it up just so it's not a nice super sharp edge. What I could also do is that kneaded eraser. I'm just going to shape it so it's very skinny right here and go right on the edge of it. And you can also press down and kind of pull away, and that will get some of the pencil lead off of there, but not all of it. And then go back and touch it up. And there would be this one that I would also clean up the edges to it. If I had stuff around the edge here, I'm going to clean the whole thing because I wouldn't have any of that shading just sticking out around that object. So there's that one, and now I'll move on to this one. Okay, here, as you can see, I've shaded. I have my darks on the opposite side of the light source here. Then I'm going through all my medium values through it to super light gray, and then I have my highlight that is the closest part of that object that would be shining this way. So that's the closest shadow on the opposite side. And you can see I went back with my eraser, cleaned everything up so I don't have the smudges and everything. Also, as you're working, I would, if you're right-handed, start on your left and work this way so you're not re-smudging all your papers. And if you're left-handed, work from this area to here so you're not smudging your papers. What you could also do is always just put a piece of paper down and work on something that you've already done so you're not smudging it. So here's the first page that I have. And what I'm going to do is just show you what I would show my students, as I have ones that are correct here, and then you can see where the lights would be. But what I've also done is just some things that get turned in sometimes, or maybe we're just not understanding. So remember, as I was saying, if we're a stick person, this would be our feet right here, and this would be our shadow going out this way. So our shadow is not up in the air. So shadow's always at the bottom corners of whatever we are drawing. Then we have here of where it's just more of a scribble, and then it's, I can't get it to do anything, it's not working. Well, you don't have enough of your pencil lead put on your object. So this one is shaded nicely, but as you can see, the shadow is not going the correct direction. They have it more as the light source would have been up here for the shadow. So always pay attention to where your light source is coming from. And then here would be page 2. So you can see light coming this way, so lighter here. And then you can see the shapes of the triangles change depending on which way the light is shining on it. Here would be some that are not complete, so they just drew the shadow wrong here. This one, it's up in the air, but it's also more of scribbles, not actual shading. And then here, it's going to go out more this way, not right there. Here would be page 3. So you can see this shape has a little bit here, but also notice how it has this. Sometimes people draw it in the wrong angle, like what I've done here. So this one is not correct. So it's like they've just taken it and just put it here. So remember, our shadow always kind of flips over. Nothing should be here and nothing here, and then the shadow should actually be here, and it should be really dark in that spot. Here is the correct one for our page 4. So when we do, say like this is a softball, baseball, something, it would have curved, not straight up and down shading. So you're going to curve it because it's a curved object. And that will help give it that depth and showing the perspective of making it look real. So this would be where somebody's just scribbled like, oh, this is how you shade. No, too many white spaces, it's not blended. This would be the straight up and down that I was talking about, so it makes it look really flat. Think of the shape of your object also. So they didn't even think about that. This is up in the air also and not correct. Here would be them again with our baseballs that we could be doing. So notice how the shadows are curved and all the objects were shaded with a curve. You could do even a kind of a cross hatching back and forth when you're shading. And cross hatching just means you're crossing the lines on top of each other. So here is then the incorrect one. And this is just so many different options that people kind of think, oh, this is how it goes. So actually look at where it needs to curve, which way the shadow direction should be going. Remember, nothing at the top. Think of it as the bottom area. This is where your feet would be, so your shadow's coming out this way. This one is just straight up and down. Remember, curve and a curved shadow. These I just did in ink, so you could kind of see. Do this in pencil, but I was just going through and marking them so you could see where the lights would be, the mediums and the dark. This is another one I was just doing so you could see placement of things, but shade with a pencil again. So lighter areas, mediums, and then darks. The same thing with this one. So this one is a little bit different because this is an open vessel. So the light's shining on it on this part that we're not seeing. But right here in the inside would be really dark. And then it would be getting lighter on the inside part right here that we're not seeing. So it does have a little bit of a glow effect highlight right there. You'd have some right there, but then it's going to be curves. And think of how the shadow is with this too. This one, notice it is off of the tabletop a little, so that plays with which way the shadow would be. Then we have some everyday, dishes in front of us. Think of how the shadow would be for something that also sticks out and then would be open, like this mug would be. This one's up higher, so it would have a smaller shadow right underneath it. But then right here in this area, it's where the sun is not seeing it, so it's going to be dark and lighter as it goes this way, because that's where it's open to the light would see in it. And then this one here, it's just thinking of the start of a landscape if you were doing that. So say the sun is setting, how much of a shadow would you be seeing on these objects and what shape would the shadow be? So this one's going to have lots of shading. So Packet here is all about shading forms. Thank you for watching.